yeah, smart house.
Alright, so now we're at the meat chickens. These are the broilers, the Cornish cross meat birds. And I think you probably read any of my dad or heard some of this stuff. You probably heard him use the term that we believe that farming production systems should be aromatically, aesthetically, and emotionally romantic. And so, you know, for me as a realist in layman's terms, I'm like, that means it doesn't stink, it doesn't look bad, and it's enjoyable. Okay, cool. So that is something that we really aspire to. And so as I mentioned back there at the feather net, looking down across all that stuff, we want it to look nice. And that it's not that it has to be, not that we're envisioning a farm with a little red barn and a pretty silo and all that. Not that. That it's enjoyable to look at it and it leaves the pasture in a better place at the end. And that it doesn't create massive intrusion into the landscape. Okay, realize that this is embedded, we call it embedded infrastructure, in that it's small, it's low, it's non-intrusive, and so you can realize that that whole hill up there, as we look to the west, has acres and acres of pig pasture in it, and you can't tell. That's what we want. We have thousands and thousands of chickens here, and it doesn't smell. Okay, and that's what we're going after from the idea of embedded agriculture. So as you look here, you can. This is the greatest because you can literally see the progression. These birds get moved every single day to a fresh spot. So you can tell I actually moved these this morning. So you can look back there. There's day one. That was this morning. Yesterday, 2 days ago, 3 days ago, 4 days ago, 5 days ago. All right, 6 days ago, and you can see the grass growing back as you go left or you're right to left there as it comes back. So again, no smell. The chickens put down their own manure all by themselves. No hauling, no moving, and of the manure. The birds walk along on their own. Let's see. Yes, ma'am. How many chickens are in each pen? Well, these aren't laying anything. So there's a little small one in here probably, and he's not doing so well. Meaning that his Cornish cross didn't cross together, so he's more like a laying hen, so he's not growing very fast. So there's 75 birds in each pen, if that helps answer your question. And there is, this whole row of pens here is about, 2,000, a little over 2,000 birds in this whole stretch.
I can't smell a
So
thing
to move
here.
one of these shelters, we just use a dolly such as this, put it under the back of the pen, lift up. Now we do this first thing in the morning. Chores here, we start at 6, and so at 6 o'clock, first things we do is come out and move these broiler shelters. We take the feeder out. Step this forward to the next section. So you know what's going on with that. Now these birds are kind of confused too because they're like, wait a minute, we've already done this, and it's hotter and they're not as comfortable, but they'll move still.
It just rolls.
Huh?
It just rolls.
You what?
It just rolls.
Yeah.
Okay, and there's one chicken shift. But that's it. So each 75 birds gets 120 square feet every day. All right, and again, it's a balance between their efficiency and yet raising them in a way that's efficacious to their diet and their health and our health. Meaning these chickens, if I gave them a great big field to roam around in, they would not roam out to the exterior. They would stay right around the feed in the water and not roam out. Whereas if I keep them within 12 feet of the feed in the water, they are very efficient with the feed because they're not having to walk very far. And yet, by moving them every single day, they get a fresh spot. And so they're moving away from manure and urine and pathogens. And yesterday, they're moving onto fresh grass. And as you can see, they're eating some. The chickens eat if you start on the echelon of grass ingestion, geese being number 1, ducks probably number 2, turkeys number 3, layers number 4, and then down here are these meat birds, which is very, very little. So the grass per part of their diet of these birds here is between 3 and 5%. Very, very small. But that changes everything. It changes all the amino acids. It changes the fatty acids. It changes the saturated fats. It changes cholesterol. All of that, just that little bit of green forage into it, changes everything. So, how important is it? Incredibly important. But it's not a huge part of that. So they're still eating. Actually, I need to put the feed back. They're still eating all of the feed that all of the poultry, the omnivores are eating. So the chickens, turkeys, pigs, all of it is a baseline mix of corn, whole roasted soybeans, rolled oats, and then a Fertrell NutriBalancer mix. And we buy all GMO-free grain that's planted, and it's milled at a local mill that's 100% GMO-free, so they don't push any wrong buttons or whatever and give us something by mistake. It's all ground pretty fresh, like every week, and brought to us, and they take care of that. And so we're bringing in the grains for the omnivores. Realize that if you were to try to poke holes in this and say, well, you're bringing in a lot of grain material and shipping a lot of grain, and I would say you're right, because I raise a lot of poultry, too much poultry. Why do I raise too much poultry? Because Americans eat too much chicken. And why do you eat too much chicken? Because it's typically been cheap, and because it's been blessed by powers that be as the healthiest, most effective meat for you to eat. From the big, I'm gonna say the big 3 or 4 beef pork. The beef pork chickens, the big 3, is considered the most healthy and the best for all this other stuff. If I was to be totally sustainable with these chickens, this 100-acre farm would have like 100 birds. That's it. Now you're back to the Laura Ingalls Wilder setting hens in January, having the little clutch of chicks, butchering the roosters for the 4th of July after they're 6 months old as a fried chicken. That's the only chicken you got. And so when the president says, I'm going to put a chicken in every pot, he didn't mean that everybody's going to be eating. I mean, everybody's going to be rich, because chicken, up until the modernization of processing, was expensive. Only the nobles and the wealthy ate poultry. Everybody else ate beef and pork because it followed you wherever you went, or you could lead it wherever you went, and then when you needed to butcher it, it would last a long time through salt pork, curing, pastrami's, prosciutto, and aging of beef and jerky and all that. Okay, you don't do that with chicken. The idea of turkey jerky is pretty new. All right. And so if someone were to shoot a grouse or a pheasant or something back in the pioneer days, that was a big deal because it was hard. Bigger target, easier to shoot at. Shoot a buffalo, more bang for your buck, quite literally, right? And that's the difference in the two. So realizing that poultry has shifted over. So if I were to say, look, how can we create a food system that is really sustainable and doesn't require me shipping around some grain? I would say eat about 2 chickens a year and eat the rest beef and pork. Okay? So again, I'm not condemning whatever you had for breakfast or whatever you're planning to have for lunch. Buy chicken, eat chicken. It allows me to put down incredible nutrients on the field. It allows me to grow great, incredible grass, more grass for the cows, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, don't shy away from buying poultry from us. But realize, or from some other pasture producer in your area, but realize that if you were wanting to say, well, this isn't truly sustainable because you're bringing in a lot of grain, I would say you're right. And until the American diet shifts over to eating more beef and pork and less poultry, I'm going to try to stay in business and create a farm and a business that works for my kids and me and family and all that, and so we're going to raise some poultry. So it allows us to be on the farm 100%, not working off farm job, and I'm third generation on the farm doing that, so that's pretty exciting. But that's what the poultry are, and again, they're omnivores. So realize, here's the other thing. When you only take the seed away from a crop, you're taking very little of the overall carbon produced and used to grow the great big plant. You know, it's okay if a cow eats corn. It just needs to eat the whole stalk and the whole plant right where it was raised. Then it puts all of that carbon right back where it came from. So realize if you harvest the seed, it's a very small volume compared to the entire stalk, right? So it's easier to replace the needed nutrients from just taking the grain away if you leave the fodder and the stalk and the straw and the stubble on the ground that you raise it from. So we try to work with the folks that are producing our GMO-free grain. We try to tell them, look, you know, let's move to no-till. Let's move towards leaving all the stubble on the pasture, eating it with cows and leaving it there. Go to cover crops and have the cows graze it down instead of herbiciding it. You know, Rome wasn't built in a day, as they say, and so we're gonna take baby steps as we go, but we try to work with them and help them move along in better ways. Questions on meat, birds, and poultry specifically? Yes, ma'am.
If you wanted to move towards more sustainable in terms of the grain, couldn't you just raise some with corn or soybeans?
Can you raise some of your own corn and soybeans yourself? Yes, but the big caveat there, when you get into grain production, it requires a massive amounts of infrastructure. Planters, harvesters, grain, storage, etc. Sometimes we as farmers, and I can point to myself, we're guilty of trying to be idealistic and individualistic. And so we don't want to work as communities sometimes. We like to do our own thing. And so sometimes it's better to let the corn and grain people do their thing than to try to be the jack of all trades. And so I would rather, this ground is not effective to be plowed. I mean, it runs off. You know, that's why the grain is being produced in the flatter areas. I don't want it to be open and tilled, but the grain production in those big wide open areas is more effective than having to fit a combine in between all these little hills and hollers and crops. So, and I want to create something that's efficient from a cost perspective. If you start buying all the planters and the harvesters and the dryers to do it, then suddenly you need to raise either thousands of acres or hundreds of something, or you create efficiency. So I say yes, just be careful. If I were going to be raising grains for omnivores, the most efficient way that I've seen it done, and we have not done it here just because of what we use the pigs for, but I've seen other people who have raised pigs, plant crops for hogs, and then use electric fence and let them do the harvesting. So then you have a planter only, they come in and you plant the crop, it grows up. If it doesn't grow, great. You still got grass, it's okay. But the pigs come in and hog it down and put everything back where they found it. And you don't have the harvesters, which are typically the big expense. And pigs eat a lot more grain per pound of protein in comparison to poultry. So that would be a great way to kind of hit a happy medium there and start going towards something. Yes, great question. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
What month is what's the last date that you have these chickens out?
For us, the last chicken is raised here. We processed the last bird about the middle of October. And that's kind of what has been a good fit for our frost date, for our region here. Again, my wife grew up in Texas, and they would grow birds in like January through May, and take a break, and then grow from like September to like into November, and kind of take December and off, and then have the middle of the summer off. So just kind of depends on where you are and what your frost dates or heat dates are to keep the birds comfortable. And of course, these shelters are good for us because we typically have to keep them more protected from rain, weather, and cold than we do from heat. So if you're in a hotter climate, the dome shapes ones work better, or the higher ones so the heat can rise and get away from the birds. Those are more effective. One more question, and we're going to head for home. Yes, sir, right there. How many chickens do we raise a year? We raise, for the meat birds specifically, we raise a little over 20,000. If you're an inspector asking that question, we raise a little under 20,000. Yeah, but and then we raise the additional turkeys and layers as well. So right here in this field, there's about 5,000 birds at any one time. Yep, good question. Yes, sir. What about the rabbits? About the rabbits, we'll stop. I'll let Shane maybe if somebody would want to walk over to the rabbits. So what we're going to do when we get down the hill, let me roll that into this. We get down the hill, we're going to park. I'm going to stay by the wagons and answer any and other and all questions until you get tired of listening to me or just tired and go home. And then if Shane would take a group of people who want to go over and see the racking house, we just don't make it an official stop on the trip. Want to get out to the big stuff, but it is right there by where we're going to stop. We're going to stop next to the chick brooder that's got the baby chicks in it. Some of you seen that, some of you haven't. You can look in the windows there. And then those of you who want to walk over with Shane to see the racking house, you can go over and look in that. Of course, the store's open the rest of the day, and so on and so forth. So, most importantly, we appreciate you taking this time to come out here. I know some of you didn't come from just down the street, and so we are honored by that, and we appreciate that. Thank you for making this investment in learning more about your food and learning more about raising food that is encouraging to others and supportive of our ecosystem and our creation. So I hope, again, you could have been anywhere today, and we're just honored that you spent it here, and we hope that you've gone away encouraged, maybe you learned a few things, and that you're able to go home and know more about your food and where it comes from and how you're going to raise food that again, beautifies the land, and we just appreciate that. So thank you for the time and the commitment and allowing us to spend these couple hours together.